Okay. So we've talked about the structure of the heart. So now we're going to talk about the sounds that heart can make and blood pressure. So blood has to get everywhere in your body, right? So it's going from that. This is the main pump to push that blood all the way through. It's a continuous system of blood. There's no spaces in the liquid. It has to be all the way through your body. So you need a considerable amount of pressure to do that. And that highest pressure is going to be in the aorta. And we talked about the aorta is at the top here, right? So we need to get this, the blood is going to be very high pressure in the aorta, and then that blood will be pushing on the rest of the blood system to push the blood out through the various channels and places that it breaks off and connects up with the arteries, the arterioles, and then eventually into the capillary system. The further you drop away, the pressure, the more the vessels branch, and the further they get away, the lower the pulse is. So we have some main arteries that carry a very strong pressure, and then we have the capillaries and things where the blood pressure is lower. So we have two measurements that we take in a heart cycle. We have a systole. The systole is a measurement of the highest pressure your blood is under, and that's usually at the point where the heart is contracting. So where the ventricles are contracting, it'll be the higher number. Okay, it's the larger number. So it's the highest pressure, so it's the largest number when we are measuring blood pressure. Has anybody ever sat down at one of those blood pressure machines and at Walmart or whatever, they have those little blood pressure sit-down machines, right? Or if you've gone to the doctor, you might have gotten your blood pressure. You'll always notice that the blood pressure is recorded as two separate numbers. The one number is this systole number. It is the higher pressure number. And then the other is the diastole number. And I'm just looking for a writing tool, which you've all gone missing. Okay. So when we say highest pressure, we are talking about a larger number, right? So highest pressure, larger number. So this is a very valuable thing to keep in mind when you get to a test, right? If it's a multiple choice test, and it says, which number is the systole, and it's like, multiple choice, then you should be able to identify the systole right away if you're comparing it to a diastole, because the systole is always going to be the larger of the two numbers. So the diastole is then the minimum pressure in the arteries. So at the start of a cardiac cycle, when the ventricles are filling with blood, the blood is still under some pressure, and as this heart is relaxing. So it is still pressurized, otherwise the blood would stop moving completely, but we still need the blood to be passing by through the capillaries and up the veins, otherwise there would be no new blood to fill up the heart. Okay. So, let's take our heart here. Remember that our heart cycle is, the heart cycle begins as the ventricle is being filled. So as blood is pouring into the ventricles from the arteries, but under their compression, that is going to be the start of our cycle. And then the end of the cycle is when the blood is going to be pushed out either to the lungs or to the rest of the body. That process is going to happen at the same time. So it'll be a squeezing of the arteries to push the blood down into the ventricles, then squeezing of the ventricles to push it out. So 1, 2, 1, 2. And if you've listened to a heart before, you know it's a sort of a lub-dub, two different sounds that we hear. So your blood pressure depends on the amount of blood, for starters. So more blood means more pressure. the heart rate, how fast your heart is pumping, the size of your arteries. So when you have narrower arteries, they'll have a little bit higher pressure. The elasticity of your vessels. So typically as we get older or as we are exposed to various factors, such as stress and things like that, we can stiffen up the tissues of the vessels, and then they can't expand or contract as easily. The more we saw in the veins, remember that the veins were very soft, and so we talked about varicose veins where the blood actually pools so much that the veins are deformed. That's a very unelastic vein. So the amount of flexibility in the tissue of the vessels. And then the viscosity of the blood. So if your blood is thicker, it can get thicker if you have a high cell count, even high white blood pressure counts and things like that, or high material in the plasma. So we can see that if we think back to some of the diseases we talked about anemia, right? Anemia is usually a lack of red blood cells. So we can say, would we expect a higher blood pressure for someone who's anemic or a lower blood pressure? Probably lower, right? Because they have less blood. So you can imagine that they might have less blood pressure, unless their heart has to compensate by pumping faster. You go to the gym, you start working out, does your blood pressure go up?
Yep.
Yeah, because your heart is pumping faster. And so we pump our heart faster to push the blood through the body system, but the side product is that your heart rate increases. So of course, if you're someone who was diagnosed with a heart condition, one of the first things they'll tell you not to do is to not go, do vigorous activities, right? Don't go, running a half marathon or anything if you are having heart problems, because we don't want to increase your blood pressure. High cholesterol can cause plaque buildup inside of the arteries, or cholesterol buildup, I should say. So cholesterol buildup inside the arteries, would that increase or decrease the blood pressure? If we think about, here's your normal vessel, and then you put some cholesterol inside, did my blood pressure go up or down? Oh, yeah. You can see that the area to get through is now smaller, so a narrower artery increases the pressure. So we see a lot of these 5 factors really are directly related to our health. And essentially all of the health issues that we have related to our heart, they can mostly be sort of broken down into effects to these 5 places. All right, so we can measure blood pressure with this thing and this thing. Sometimes they are connected. So this is oh boy, I'm going to have to pronounce it. Sphygmomanometer. This is also known as blood pressure cuff. It is a cuff like this. Inside is a rubber bag, and when you place it around your arm, you can start to pump, and the bag fills full of air. So what's important here is that this will start to squeeze your arm, right? As it squeezes the arm, the other thing we notice is a pressure monitor. And so this pressure monitor is measuring 2 things. It's measuring the blood pressure inside of the cuff. Well, actually, that's really all it's measuring. It's measuring the blood pressure inside the cuff. As you pump it up, this one's not getting much pressure because it's not on my arm. But at a certain point, it will actually be providing enough pressure to stop blood from flowing through your, should be a release on here, just doesn't want to turn. Oh, there it goes. Okay. Once you provide enough pressure, it will stop the blood flow in your arm. At the point where it's stopping the blood flow, we can think of that is where it is providing exactly the same amount of pressure as the pressure in your blood. So if it stops flow completely, then that must be the point where you are stopping the blood, and so whatever pressure you read here is the same pressure as is in your artery. And then you can release the pressure, and as you release the pressure, you'll be able to hear the heart sounds until a certain point. At the point where you can't hear the heart sounds anymore, then that's the lowest point where the blood pressure with the cuff was doing any work, and that pressure would be the diastolic pressure. So by measuring the systolic and the diastolic, we usually take those as a ratio, and that ratio can tell us something about how hard your heart is working. So I'm going to give you a little video on this.